Thank you for joining us here at the First Alert Desk on Atlanta News First Plus. We have a special installment of a new segment we want to introduce you to with our media partners at Decaturish. I'm joined by Dan Wisenhunt. He's the founder and editor of Decaturish. And Dan, this is a brand new digital special that you and I got together and decided to do. Before we get into it and announce it, I do just want to, for those that are unfamiliar, talk a little bit about what Decaturish is.
What is Decaturish? That's so philosophical. So Decaturish was formed in 2013. I kind of started it as a personal project, and then I just kept doing things, and then I had people come in and help me do the things, and I paid those people to do the things, and then I paid more people to do more things. And, 10 years later, I turned around and somehow or another, I'm running a local news business. So Decaturish, for all intents and purposes, is the local newspaper without a print version. We cover everything that goes on in our community, from crime to community meetings to local events. We try to fill those niches that the daily newspaper used to fill in communities. And so that's really what we're all about. We've got 2 full-time employees, myself and Zoe Seiler. We've got a very talented team of freelance contributors. We're hoping to build on that and grow in the coming years, but we're happy to be here, happy to serve Decatur and DeKalb County.
And on your website, you say you're telling the untold stories of DeKalb County, those community hyperlocal stories, which is so important. DeKalb County is one of Metro Atlanta's biggest counties, and we appreciate the work that you do. So it is with great pleasure that we bring you on here and announce our new digital show. It'll air weekly, and it is called Decatur Dish, dishing out all of the latest happenings in DeKalb County with none other than Decaturish. Dan, I know that this is something that we wanted to get together with you and hop on here and just highlight DeKalb County and all of that goes on in that booming community. I want to start with some big news that could change a lot in DeKalb County. The DeKalb Charter Review Commission recommending subpoena powers for commissioners. What kind of impacts are we looking at?
Right. So the Charter Review Commission process, just for your viewers' illumination, I would say, a charter functions basically like a county or a city's constitution. That would be the closest analog. It describes the powers and duties of elected officials. It describes the official functions of government. And every few years, cities and counties like to go through this process where they say, okay, is what we have working? Is it not working? What can we do to tweak or fix it? In DeKalb County, the form of government's been under debate for a while. So one thing that is going to happen probably and to be clear, there's a lot of steps that have to happen before this becomes law. But there's talk about giving county commissioners subpoena power, and the intent of that is to give county commissioners a way to summon department heads to county meetings and say, hey, tell me what's going on. Because the way the county is currently structured, the county commission has no direct oversight over county employees. That's overseen by the county CEO, who is Mike Thurmond. DeKalb is, I believe, the only county in Georgia who has a CEO model. The closest analog for your viewers might be a city manager, except it's an elected position. And during the charter review process, one of the things that they talked about was taking the CEO role away and replacing it with a proper county manager. So somebody who would have a degree in public administration, somebody who wouldn't be elected, and who would serve at the pleasure of the county commission. That did not happen, although I feel like that gets talked about every couple of years for whatever reason. I think people just they just don't like that DeKalb County stands out in that way. And also, historically, DeKalb has had some pretty corrupt CEOs. Mike Thurmond, thankfully, has not been. He's run a good, clean government, and he's term limited. So there's going to be a CEO's race coming up, and the commissioners who'd have to vote on this are also going to be running for CEO. So I doubt very seriously they would vote to limit opportunities for themselves. Another proposal that was on the table was adding commission seats, so they wanted to add 2 more to our 7-member board, and that's just a reflection of the population growth in DeKalb County. People want government that's closer to them. That did not happen. Doing away with the county CEO did not happen. The biggest change that's going to be recommended is giving county commissioners that subpoena power. County commissioners have to approve those recommendations. Then the General Assembly has to approve them, which General Assembly does what the General Assembly is going to do 9 times out of 10. And then it's going to go to the voters for approval. So those are the steps in that process. But the impact for residents, I would say, is there would be an opportunity for county commissioners to kind of go outside the chain of command to get answers about things that are going on that they might not otherwise be able to obtain through the normal process. Because right now, they're depending on the CEO to tell them what's going on, and the CEO can tell them whatever he wants to tell them.
At Monday night's DeKalb County Board meeting,
Keep doing what you're doing because you're doing a good job.
the district's Human Resource Department got a pat on the back from board members for filling a huge teacher vacancy gap.
I'm saying a great job, fantastic. And the way that you all have worked to bring these numbers down.
In June, there were 625 teacher vacancies, but now there's only about 174 openings.
And so what we see now is a culmination of all of our efforts to ensure that every child in the district has access to a high quality, highly qualified educator.
Though progress has been made,
Although we're not 100% staffed, we are a whole lot better off than we were earlier this summer.
one board member posed a concern.
My concern is we need teachers. We have people coming in here, teachers been here 20 and 30 years and not making the kind of money that people that are being brought in here are making. Something is wrong with that. There's a disparity here.
District officials say they've already implemented something for returning employees this school year.
All returning employees, in addition to a 6% cost of living adjustment, along with a step increase, will receive a $2,000 retention bonus.
And for new hires, they will receive a $3,000 new hire incentive, which Ward Smith says will roll out in October.
Want our community to rest assured, as well as parents, we don't cut corners. Even though we acknowledged that we had 625 teacher vacancies, we made sure that every individual that we hire was properly vetted and met the credentials in an effort to be a certified teacher in the state of Georgia.
All right, so that was a look at the ongoing issue. And you mentioned to me that this teacher shortage has really gotten worse since the pandemic. So a serious look at how to improve that. Now the teacher residency program, what exactly does that program aim to do?
Well, the gist of it is just to create a pipeline for professionals who maybe want to get into the field and just gives them a more structured way to do that. Dr. Devin Horton, the superintendent, actually ran a similar program at his old district up in Chicago. So in many ways, this is sort of a copy-paste of what he did up there. I believe there are a few hundred teachers that were brought into the field that way. I do think that there's a barrier to access for people who might want to get into teaching, but maybe don't want to go through all the formal steps. They might have a college degree in something else. And this is just to sort of give them a little bit of a lift to help get them into the classroom. There are, just as teachers are retiring, there are people who are mid-career who are looking for a career change. They see teaching as teaching has its upsides. I know it's very challenging for the teachers in our classroom, and, they're all my heroes, and I appreciate them all. But teachers do have pretty decent retirement and health care benefits on the whole. So a lot of people who maybe work in places like the restaurant industry with a little less stability, are seeing teaching as a more stable profession. There's a ton of need for it. I was just looking up the stats. DeKalb is down by about 200 teachers, give or take, and down by about 200 assistant teachers, also known as, I take that back, it's 143 assistant teachers, also known as paraprofessionals. The pandemic burned a lot of people out. It was really stressful doing virtual school for 2 years. Getting teachers and kids back in the classroom was equally stressful. There was a lot of angst and emotion around that. There are a number of teachers who were approaching retirement anyway. So they just decided to move on. Some of them might have gone to another district. That's a popular thing that teachers will do. They'll get vested in one district and then get vested in another district. My mother is a public school teacher and did that. DeKalb County changes superintendents about as often as I change socks, which doesn't create a whole lot of leadership stability within the district. And every time you get a new leader in an organization, the priorities change. And I think that there is a lot of institutional uncertainty in addition to all the other factors that I just mentioned that makes teachers say, maybe I could move to another district that's a little bit less of a headache. So that's something that our county leaders at the school board level have to address. And it's really up to the board in terms of how long they hold on to a superintendent and picking another superintendent. So Dr. Horton was just hired over the summer. I think there's an argument that could be made that he hasn't had a real good chance to run his program yet. So we'll see if this yields results.
We talk about the school board. I want to bring up the Decatur school board specifically, announcing improved salaries and benefits for their board members, another thing that could trickle down. Let's talk a little bit about the increased pay that's expected in 2024.
Real simply, serving on the school board is not a path to prosperity. In fact, it's usually the opposite. School board members put in ridiculous amounts of hours serving our community. And for the longest time, Decatur school board members were paid next to nothing. And if you think about it, that really limits the amount of access that people have to run for school board. So if you would look at Decatur in the past, a lot of the board members were lawyers or realtors or people who had the sort of career flexibility that allowed them to sort of make their own schedules and serve in those capacities. Over time, the school board has tried to diversify its ranks by providing at least some incentive to get people to serve on the board. So it increased from, almost nothing to like 600, and then they bumped it up again to 900 for a regular board member, 925, I think, for the vice chair, 950 for the chair. A lot of people hear a school board giving itself a pay raise, and they think, I wish I could give myself a pay raise. And, the sentiment's understandable, particularly when you're talking about taxpayer money. But I do think there's a good faith argument to be made that you lose a diversity of perspectives on your school board if finances are a barrier to serving. If you have to go to a 8-hour school board meeting and you're a single parent, for example, you're going to need a babysitter. Well, you're not going to get a babysitter for free, so you've got to have some way to pay that person. So just little things like that over time. There's been a lot of discussion around paying elected officials because it is a big time commitment, believe it or not. They don't just sit up there and nod their head. They actually go to workshops and they do training, and most of it's uncompensated. So nobody's, I think, trying to get rich by serving on the school board, or at least they shouldn't be. But I do think it's a recognition of there being a significant time commitment in public service and wanting to adequately compensate people for their time.
Stepping away from some headlines surrounding current movements for schools, let's put a spotlight on local businesses. Most recently, the Decatur Downtown Development Authority announced it would be considering new grants for local businesses. What prompted that interest in providing this type of assistance?
Well, that's what the DDA does. The Downtown Development Authority exists to promote local businesses in any way that they can. During the pandemic, they got a lot of federal money through the Pandemic Relief Fund. So they distributed quite a bit of money to local businesses. And full disclosure, I'm a business license holder in the city of Decatur, and even we got a grant, even though we annoy those people sometimes. But they didn't hold it against us, thank God. And we have benefited from that. Other businesses have benefited from that assistance as well. They're embarking on a new grant program. They're going to have $75,000 for commercial type improvements, and they're going to have $25,000 for email, for marketing and website design. And in full disclosure, I might apply for the funds for marketing and website design because God knows we need some help. We don't always have money sitting around in our budget for a website tune-up. So that's really what's going on there. The program is still being discussed. At the last meeting, there was some discussion about, are we giving money to tenants to make improvements that their landlords should be making, or are we giving money to the actual property owners? Property ownership in Decatur, when it comes to being a business, is not the norm. And if you take a look around the landscape of business in Decatur, a lot of the ones that have been there a long time own their own building. It's very, very unusual in some respects to have a long-time tenured business that's a renter. So they're going to have to work through some of that, who gets the money and why. There'll be a 25% match, I believe, so you'll have to put in some of your own money to make that happen. But, it by all accounts was a successful program when they did that during the pandemic. I mean, during the pandemic, they were just giving people money. They weren't asking too many questions about it. They just assumed that everybody, needed a hand, which was true, because the pandemic basically killed the restaurants for a little while. So they've got a track record of being successful at that kind of program in the past. They're going to have to work through some technical details about it going forward. But I expect that we'll be hearing more news about that in the coming months and how they plan to implement that program.
We'll keep you updated
Yeah,
both on
absolutely.
Atlanta News First and Decaturish.com. So, all right, this next segment I like to call the Talk of the Town. These stories that got people in DeKalb County and surrounding communities talking, and it's none other than a very special Kroger down in Decatur.
Yes, the baby Kroger at 720 Commerce is, it's been there for 22 years. It's a long time to be in one place. Served a lot of people who walk, to Decatur is a very pedestrian-centric community. We also have an older population who appreciated having a store that they could walk to. But Kroger decided in December of 2022 to close that location, but they still had a lease. So they closed it, and they just kept it closed, and it's going to be closed through 2025. In the meantime, the owner's got to figure out what to do with it. And so the big news that we reported last week is the owner, Stein Investments, is going to partner with Pope and Land, which is another developer that owns some adjacent office space, and they're going to combine those two pieces of property and turn it into some kind of a mixed-use development with a grocery store. Everybody in Decatur is praying for a Trader Joe's. I do not know if Trader Joe's is going to happen. I do not have special insight on that, but I know.
Are you hoping for a Trader Joe's?
I'm a little bit cynical. I mean, Aldi is like Trader Joe's without the Hawaiian shirts. I mean, it's basically the same company. You got $2 wine. You got the same products, but Trader Joe's is just an obsession, and I think not having one is sort of a blow to the collective ego of DeKalb County. Everyone's like, we've got the resources, we've got the money, we can support this. But for whatever reason, it hasn't happened yet. We do have some other similar products. We have Lidl, we have Aldi. I told them, they could put a Lidl in the baby Kroger and they could call it Lidl Baby, but nobody liked that dad joke, so it was rejected. But Trader Joe's it's almost a running joke. And actually for our April Fool's Day joke on Decaturish, we announced that we were going to take over the space and call it Barter Bob's and make it like a Bob Ross themed
I'm for that.
grocery store. Yeah, our prices aren't low. They're just happy little accidents, But yeah, so I mean, there is a strong push, when people hear mixed use in Decatur, they think, oh boy, here we go again. Another mixed use, more traffic, more apartments, more retail that's chain and not locally owned. But I guarantee you, opinions would turn around very, very quickly if they could attach a Trader Joe's to that project. At this point, they might even build a statue of the developers. I don't know.
This has become a push for Trader Joe's. We're starting a petition.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I believe there may have been petitions in the past, but there is a strong desire in general to have another grocery store in that space to replace the one that was lost. when that closed, Decatur started a circulator shuttle program, but it's sort of like a MARTA add-on, if you will, and it ran routes around the city, and it goes to the Publix. And, this is no knock on Publix. I love my neighborhood Publix. But people like to price compare when they grocery shop. I know I don't always buy everything at Publix. Sometimes I'll go to Aldi or the Kroger down the road for me to see if they got a little better price on something. And I do think that there's a desire within the community to have competition within the local market when it comes to groceries, and Trader Joe's would certainly provide that.
Why do you think mixed-use development is so controversial for Decatur?
It's controversial everywhere. It's very typical of any project. The last few projects that have come down in Decatur have all been mixed use. And it's driven by money. I mean, people wouldn't be building these things if there wasn't a financial component to it. The main issue that people have with it is it never seems very original to them. In Decatur, though, we do have inclusionary zoning, so there will be a certain amount of units set aside as affordable units for people who are lower income to move in. That's actually the law in Decatur now. It wasn't before. So every new mixed use going forward, you're going to see some affordable housing component. But people are generally resistant to change just because they don't like change. And traffic is an issue. And, I live next to the North DeKalb Mall, and, it's going to be huge. I mean, it's going to be thousands of homes, and it will be a traffic imposition. At the same time, a property that's not generating any tax revenue is not doing DeKalb County or its residents much good. So there's always a balance you have to strike when it comes to those sort of things. But the bottom line is the developer, if they've got the zoning, they can put whatever they want there. Their argument is going to be, we might as well put something decent that people will support, as opposed to just, putting whatever we can there as is and going from there. So I think those are kind of the two sides. But I get it. I mean, I get it. Development definitely adds to congestion around where you live. There's no denying that. The question is, for everybody, what are the trade-offs? What do we get for it?
The DeKalb County Animal Shelter does fantastic work for pets that are in need of homes and connecting them with their forever families. But most recently, and really for a long time, it has been dealing, like many other shelters, with a constant overcrowding issue. Our Adam Murphy actually spoke to a rescue organization about some of the efforts that are being taken to prevent these shelter pets from ending up on the kill list, the euthanasia process. And as you and I will talk about, there's now a push to end that no-kill policy.
Oh, my SpongeBob. He's an amazing big guy. Love this guy.
Rosalie Hathcock is an animal lover and volunteer for Lifeline, which runs 2 major shelters in Metro Atlanta.
And he has these extra wrinkles around his face. So gosh, it would make me so happy if I could get that baby adopted.
She and some of her fellow volunteers decided it was time to think outside the box and come up with a way to get more people interested in adopting the dogs in the Fulton and DeKalb County shelters.
It's hard when, that's overcrowding and the dogs are stressed, and because of that, it just leads to decline and more demand. And
so she created dog profile cards, much like baseball cards, but for animals, and attached them to pieces of candy that homeowners and businesses could hand out this Halloween season.
And we chose 100 of the dogs that have been here for 50 or more days that are not necessarily getting the attention of people when they walk through the shelter, but are awesome animals.
The cards give fun facts about the dogs that have been in the shelter for 50 or more days. A Lifeline spokesperson said there are a couple hundred dogs over capacity between the 2 shelters.
The outcome could be very, very sad if we can't figure out some more creative ways, and instead of doing shock value with euthanasia, trying to figure out a different way to get people's attention and a way to help and see how great these animals really are.
Yeah, so a push with Halloween candy to get people informed on all these pets that, if they're not rescued, otherwise they won't really have much of a future. That brings me to the no-kill pet policy, and that is a push from PETA, from local DeKalb County commissioners.
PETA's argument is that it's inhumane to keep them in these conditions, and it would be more humane to provide euthanasia to animals that are unadoptable. There's a no-kill advocacy group who takes the different view, that says the county should keep that policy in place. You know, that shelter is built for 250 dogs, is my understanding, and they've got more than 600. So they can maybe make it work at 400, 450-ish, but they've got to, adopt out 21 dogs a day pretty consistently to make that happen, and it's just hard. It's harder than ever to own a pet in DeKalb County. Some apartments don't allow them. People are always struggling to find housing. There's a debate about, what kinds of animals you're able to get from the shelter. If you want a younger dog, that might not always be available to you. So they're pulling out all the stops. Animals is to get these dogs adopted. Animals and animal rights are things that people are very, very passionate about. I think it's just important to recognize that there's a complicated issue at play here. It has things to do with housing affordability. It has things to do with shelter capacity, funding. The amount of cases that are being prosecuted now for animal cruelty, those dogs have to be kept as evidence until those cases are resolved. So there are a lot of things going on that have created this crisis, and I think there are a lot of people who are coming at the problem from a place of good faith, who are trying to solve it. But right now, there's not widespread agreement. I mean, you've got PETA fighting with the no-kill animal shelter group. This is going to take a minute to figure out. But at the end of the day, I think everybody involved wants what's best for the animals. We're just trying to figure out what that is right now as a county.
We'll continue to monitor that. I know you guys are following that closely on Decaturish.com.
Absolutely, yeah.
All right, our last talk of the town, if you are a DeKalb County resident, probably the most important one right now in late October, early voting currently underway ahead of the November 7th election. Want to talk to you about everything that you basically need to know so that you can go out there and vote.
Yeah, absolutely. We're really preachy about local elections because it's the government that is closest to you, and it's the government that has more ability to make an immediate impact on your life than any other government. But it's the election that a lot of us think about the least. And sometimes that's because there aren't a lot of people running. There aren't a lot of contentious issues going on. In Decatur, we have mostly uncontested races except for the school board, and that's because it's an open seat, and that's not a real mudslinging race of any sort. It's just two people who just really want to help the schools, and they both happen to be running for the same seat. Avondale Estates, same situation. There are no contested seats. There are 3 seats on the ballot. But then you've got places like Clarkston, which has gone through a lot of civic turmoil of late. They had controversy regarding their previous city manager, who they parted ways with. And there are a lot of people who are very angry about the state of city government. And typically, I think there are 8 or 9 candidates that are running for Clarkston City Council. Maybe not quite that many, but it's more than 5. Some of them served on the council previously. But typically, when you see a large number of candidates in a local election, that's usually a sign that people are not very happy with the current state of their government, and that is certainly the case in Clarkston. There are 3 incumbents running. They're all running for re-election, and there are quite a few people running to unseat those incumbents, and in local elections, even 100 votes can make a difference between who runs a city or not. So that's something we're going to be keeping an eye on. Tucker is an interesting one because Tucker has term limits, and that's in the charter, which we talked about earlier. One of the things that makes Tucker unique as a city. So they've got some contested races as well. I did want to point out that District 2 race, there are 3 candidates of color running in that race. That means no matter what, as a result of that election, Tucker will have its first council member of color, which is a big thing. You know, the city's only been around for 7 or 8 years, and it's had all white council members up until this point. So that is one thing that will definitely change on November 7th, and it's a sign that, you know, Tucker's growing up a little bit as a city, and it's able to represent more of its community in elected office. Elections are going on through November 3rd. Decaturishvotes.com is our URL. It links to all our campaign coverage. We posted a voter's guide recently. There are some things I'll touch on briefly. We've got the homestead exemption. We've got ESPLA. So homestead exemptions are basically tax breaks for people who are homeowners. Some of them are age-based. You know, my family, we own our house, so we get a homestead exemption just for being homeowners. And then there's special purpose local option sales taxes, or SPLOST. And those are, sales tax levies that pay for things like roads and buildings and other brick and mortar type things that you see in your community. And so those will be on the ballot this year. We won't really have time to get into the intricacies of them, but I would tell you to go to decaturishvotes.com and look up our voter guide, and you'll find all the information you need on all of these local races. And I would just encourage anybody watching this to if you're registered, go vote. You know, there's plenty of opportunities to early vote. There are plenty of locations to do that. There's really no excuse. You don't have to worry about lines for the most part. And it matters. And if you are unsure who to vote for, then check out decaturishvotes.com, because we've got links to our Q&As. We did candidate forums with a lot of these candidates, and we wrote stories about those forums as well. So we feel that we've given you everything that we can give you to help you make an informed choice this election, and we hope you will exercise your right to vote and vote in the November 7th election.
As we wrap up our conversation here on Atlanta News First Plus with none other than Decaturish, Dan, we want to put a spotlight on the DeKalb County community. Just recently, a Decatur high school student was honored by a city commission for really being a good Samaritan and being there for someone in a time of need. And as our Madeline Montgomery reports, this really a tragic story, but one that ended in justice.
Unsung heroes finally getting their dues after tragedy struck one of their own.
My friends were walking to class and they saw him in the stretcher, and they were like, oh my gosh, our favorite crossword got hit.
Decatur police say 69-year-old Jeffrey Smith was hit by a driver who didn't even stop on Monday morning.
He was here every morning. He said good morning. He was so nice. I just don't understand. It's very difficult to hear and to understand why someone would do that.
Police say Smith is recovering, and the driver, Al-Rahman Heath, has been arrested thanks to a Decatur high schooler who made note of his license plate number. And while Smith's regulars are glad to know he's okay and that there will be justice.
So I saw him every single day. He was so nice, and we always talked while I was waiting before we crossed.
They believe one arrest won't stop the issues at South Candler Street and East College Avenue.
My friend group, we really don't want to cross here anymore, and even that cross section back there is no better. My friends have been hit on that cross section too, and we have the lights. It's always busy. The roads are busy, walkers are busy.
Agnes Scott College, Decatur High School, and Beacon Hill Middle School all have students crossing these streets daily. And while folks agree the crossing guards are doing all they can,
people don't understand. They really are putting their lives on the line for us, because Atlanta drivers, we know, are crazy.
They feel more could be done.
I think that they need to have a police officer posted here, because I think people would take it more seriously and are less inclined to run a light or hit someone with their car.
Madeline Montgomery, Atlanta News First.
That was our Madeline Montgomery. Good news here, 69-year-old Decatur resident Jeffrey Smith is okay, and that student, Tessa Hebner, being honored by the City Commission. Really important moment for the community to just celebrate that everyone was okay.
Yeah, well, I mean, it had a decent ending. There's presumably going to be justice. Of course, everybody's innocent until proven guilty, so we need to wait and let that trial play out for the person who's accused. But, Decatur residents have a very close relationship with their crossing guards. Again, we're a very pedestrian-focused town. Crossing guards are known by name. There's more than 40 of them in the city of Decatur, and they work at various intersections. They see the same faces every day. They know the kids by name. The kids know the crossing guards by name. And so when there was a hit and run on a crossing guard, there was a general sentiment of, oh, hell no. And a lot of people were very upset about that particular incident. Thankfully, the crossing guard is going to be all right. But when they made the arrest, they kind of surprised everyone and said a Decatur high school student had stayed, had rendered aid, but not only had done that, had grabbed the license plate number of the vehicle in question as it sped off, and got a description of the suspect. So I think Tessa is the kind of kid that every parent is hoping to raise, to be that quick thinking in a moment like that. But she didn't panic. She did all the things that she needed to do and more. And what she did ultimately led to the arrest of this suspect, who they found later that day. And of course, that's a whole legal process that has to play out. But the Decatur police are very secret squirrel about, who the student was. Obviously, it's a juvenile, so they can't release those records. But I know that every media outlet in town was cold calling everyone in Decatur trying to figure out who this kid was. We certainly were. We wanted to have that story first, and we did get it first because we covered the commission meetings. And she showed up, and they gave her an honor. She didn't say a whole lot. I get the sense that she's not really seeking attention. Again, the kind of kid every parent hopes to raise. But yeah, it's a story that everyone could smile at and say, yeah, the kids are going to be okay. For as much grief as they get. We're raising some pretty good kids in this community, and we should be proud of that.
Another example of what makes DeKalb County so special.
Indeed.
The incredible work that Decaturish does to cover these local stories and the stories of these community members who do amazing things. If you enjoyed this episode of Decatur Dish, as we dish out the latest news headlines, community stories, as you like to say, Dan, the untold stories of DeKalb County.
So many untold stories.
So many.
So little time.
Make sure you check out Decaturish.com. I'm going to drop that super down there so you can see it. They follow all of the happenings in DeKalb County, surrounding communities. I know you also have a newsletter. Where can people find you guys?
Yeah, so a few things for your viewers. Locally sourced news.com is where you can find the sign-up link for our newsletter. We have an events newsletter that goes out on Monday, and we have a Decatur Dish email that goes out on Friday. That contains all of the top stories from the week. If you appreciate what we do, we do this for free if we could, but we can't. Supportyourlocalnews.com. Again, that is supportyourlocalnews.com. That'll give you links to become a paying subscriber. You can pay us a little bit of money every month, or you can donate to our fall fundraiser. To keep us going. We set a goal of $25,000 for that fundraiser, and we're already up to $9,000, and fall doesn't end until December. I checked the calendar, so we have still got time to meet that goal. So please, and also, if you're watching this, I believe Atlanta News First would appreciate it if you download their app on Roku and wherever you stream your TV, so you can access this program and other great shows that they're putting out on that platform. Maria, you could probably give the viewers a little bit more information about that.
Yep, we got the Atlanta News First app, and make sure you tune in next week right here on Atlanta News First Plus for another installment of Decatur Dish with none other than Decaturish Dan. We'll see you next time.
Thank you. See you next time.